Hey everyone, hope you're doing good. So today I'm going to talk about how to deal with interview fear and how to build confidence, which can help clear these interviews, especially coding interviews in tech companies, which are some of the most challenging interviews. But these points may apply to other interviews in general as well. If you're watching this video, I'm sure you must have already experienced this almost paralyzing kind of anxiety before the interview and also especially during the interviews. Most often we are so afraid during the interview that even if you know the answer to the question, you cannot answer it properly, and once you came back home you realized how silly mistake you did and how you screwed up after months of preparation, and then we regret it for several days. This has happened to me many times, even if I had seen the problem before and knew the answer, but during the interview I was not able to explain that, or sometimes even I know the answer but I got confused and started doubting if the answer I know is right or not. And mainly, I was afraid to explain what I know, fearing that I might look stupid in front of the interviewer. When I was looking for job change, I was fortunate enough to attend the on-site interviews in almost all of the major companies in Silicon Valley and a lot of startups as well. Attending each of these interviews was really frightening and exhausting. But these experiences have taught me some of the most valuable lessons about this interview anxiety, and also, I interview many candidates for software engineering roles on a daily basis. Based on these experiences, I would like to share some insights about how to deal with this fear of interviews. We have to understand what are the root causes of this almost paralyzing anxiety and how to address each of these issues. You might have observed this when you give interviews for companies that you are not so keen on joining, you do not experience that much fear. So you are more confident and you give answers very well. But when it comes to interviews with your dream companies, your confidence level changes and anxiety takes over. In those interviews, you appear less confident and you're not so sure about your answers, and you end up making mistakes. You behave differently as if you're a different person altogether. This happens because when you really want something badly, you're more afraid of not getting it. You're more afraid of failing. You keep thinking about what if I make a mistake during the interview and blow away this opportunity. And if you keep thinking about making mistakes, you will end up making mistakes. Especially during the interview, if we get stuck or make even a small mistake, your panic and anxiety kicks in, right? So heartbeats raising, hand sweating, and you cannot think clearly and organize your thoughts. And most importantly, we are always afraid that I'm looking stupid in front of this interviewer who will reject me anyways, right? This is where a lot of us screw up, because we are at our best when we can think clearly and not afraid. Consciously or subconsciously, we make it a huge deal that we have to be perfect to clear the interview, and we feel that even if we make a small mistake, we will be judged by the interviewer as unfit for the role, even though we know that we are good, but we are always afraid of this. So this is one of the main problem. We think we need to be perfect, or we need to give perfect answer for all the question and demonstrate to the interviewer that you are flawless. This kind of mindset puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on yourself. First of all, we have to get rid of this unrealistic expectation about ourselves in the interview. So what really helps during the interview is be yourself and be the best version of yourself. So the more you try to pretend to be perfect and pretend to be something you're not, you look more and more stupid. It becomes much easier if you decide to be just yourself and give answer based on whatever you know. If you don't know some technique or algorithm, it just means that you need more practice or learning, but it doesn't mean that you're not good enough. This attitude helps you express whatever you know and whatever coding or design skills you have already. It helps you demonstrate that very clearly. Interviewers are looking to understand what you know and how you think when you're given a problem. It's never a test of how perfect and flawless you are and how many lead code problems you have solved. One of the things that helps a lot in dealing with this fear is attending more and more interviews and saving the best interviews for the last. Attend interviews for companies that you are okay with failing and companies that you may never heard of. I'm not saying to waste someone's time, but there is nothing wrong in going and interviewing with companies that you may have never heard of, or you have no chance of getting through. When you attend more and more on-site interviews, your brain becomes more familiar with the experience of being in the stressful interviews. When you're in a completely unfamiliar situation, your anxiety is always really high, and whether it's a coding exercise or design rounds, you end up making a lot of mistakes. But the good news is you will learn and adapt a lot faster. Also, the good thing is there are a lot of companies and a lot of startups out there you can go and interview with. And again, I'm not recommending to waste someone's time, but think of it this way. So even companies interview 20 to 50 candidates before filling one position. Even startups are very selective about hiring good candidates. So there is no harm in going and interviewing. And you never know, you might find your next big opportunity in a startup. So attending these interviews will help you identify where your preparation is lacking and focus on those areas. For example, you may need more practice in how you analyze the algorithms or how you explain the system design problems, how you approach it, and you can work on those mistakes. Also, attending the interviews make your brain more and more familiar with the situation of being in the stressful interviews. So when you actually go for interviews with companies that you want to work for, you will be in a familiar situation and you know your strengths and weaknesses. Especially if you have cleared some of these interviews in the past, you are much more confident and less anxious. When you clear more and more interviews, it reinforces your brain to think that you are good at this, and that boosts your confidence. And the goal is not to become perfect or flawless in the interview, but just building that confidence to be yourself and express whatever you know with clarity. So even when you have cleared some of these interviews in the past and have offers from some of these companies, still when it comes to interviewing for a position at your dream company, you end up panicking and end up making mistakes. So that's because our brain tends to focus on wrong things. So we keep thinking about what can go wrong, what if I make a mistake and not get it, and keep thinking about making mistakes, you end up making mistakes, right? So we have to change the focus of our brain. So that brings me to the next point, how to deal with being afraid of the interviewer itself. So this is one of the underlying reasons for the anxiety during the interviews is that we get intimidated by the interviewer itself. Especially if you're interviewing for companies which are infamous for being super selective in hiring. So most of the time we fail the interviews because we go into the interview thinking that I do not belong here and I'm not good enough for this role and I'll get rejected anyways. And most commonly this interviewer will find out that I'm not good enough. So if you go to an interviewer thinking that you do not belong there, then you have already failed the interview. Why should the company hire you if you do not believe yourself that you can be a good fit for the company or that role? See, the people who are working at these companies or the ones who are interviewing you were in the same situation as you are at some point. So most of them has have failed in the interviews and took few times to clear the interview and reach where they are now. So they must also have gone through the same level of anxiety and self-doubt and low confidence and whatnot. So it's just a matter of time. So first you have to believe that you have it in you to clear the interview and can do good in the company and in that position. And when you first believe that, then it shows clearly in your confidence and your interview performance. So this is also a reason why we do really well in companies that we do not care much about because you know you can clear the interview and you can easily get an offer. So you have to go into the interview with the same attitude that you have it in you to clear this interview and you can do good in this company. And someday you will be in the interviewer's position taking interviews of other candidates who are afraid. Right? So speaking of the interviewer, there is no reason to be afraid of them. Think of them as your peers, a teammate with whom you are trying to collaborate or to solve a given problem and share ideas. Interviewers are not looking for that flawless genius who knows everything and solve all the problems, but they are looking to hire a great teammate first, who is really good at what they do and with whom they can work really well. So think of the interviewer as a chance to demonstrate how awesome of a coworker you can be. One important thing to keep in mind is some interviewers are really good at communicating or talking with the candidates, and other interviewers are not so good and do not talk at all during the interviews. So they will have a poker face just taking notes. Sometimes it's deliberate. Interviewers want to put pressure on candidates to get the answers out of you, see how you perform under stress. Or most often, it's just that the interviewer's communication and talking style is not that good. And you might have noticed that you feel really good and confident if the interviewer is smiling and acknowledging you and agreeing with you. And if the interviewer is pretty serious and not telling anything or constantly questioning your answers, you will end up making mistakes or become more anxious. You will lose confidence. You don't really feel good in those interviews. We have to be aware of this and do not get bothered by it. So you have to prepare yourself mentally that no matter what interviewers' reactions are, you should not feel intimidated. Even if the interviewer is not listening to you and just taking notes on his laptop, you should not be bothered by it. And some of the things that can help ease up the tension and help your performance is smile and be respectful and kind, no matter what. So listen to whatever the interviewer tells very carefully and acknowledge that whatever they are telling. So you cannot control interviewers' behavior, right? But you can control your own behavior during that interview and towards that interviewer. So no matter how the interviewer responds to you, you should communicate with the same politeness and kindness in every interview and same behavior that you expect from others. And I'm not saying to be fake or show fake enthusiasm. Being polite, kind, and friendly reduces the tension, reduces your own fear and anxiety during the interview. Interviewer doesn't have to lose anything, but you're the one who is under a lot of pressure, right? So by doing this, it will help reduce some anxiety. You should show confidence in the interviews, but never be arrogant. So no matter how good you are at your skill or domain expertise, no one likes an arrogant teammate or what we call jerks. So be confident, but at the same time, be kind and polite as well. See, from my experience, both giving and taking interviews, interviewers like the candidates who are confident and calm and confident that they can clear the interview. So, no matter how much experienced the interviewers are in interviewing, at the end of the day, your demeanor, confidence level, and your communication during the interview affects the interview scores a lot, more than you think. Because no matter how much we try to be unbiased as an interviewer, deep down the interviewers are always evaluating if they would work with a candidate or if they would enjoy working with this person that they are interviewing. So if this person can be one of us, so you should focus on giving a great vibe during the interview. You cannot avoid anxiety, fear of failure, and rejection, but focus all your efforts on putting your best foot forward by showing your confidence, a positive attitude. Be the best version of yourself during the interview. In the interview, instead of keep thinking about not making any mistakes or not screwing up, think about how to give your answers to the best of your knowledge. You should focus on how you talk your ideas out, what you're thinking. For example, if you're solving a coding problem, talk it out loudly to the interviewer and your thoughts. The interviewers appreciate that. You should explain your ideas, even if it may not be the best solution, but you are free to express that. Also, whenever you are explaining some things during the interview, giving an answer, explain it with complete details. So you should explain an answer assuming that like the interviewer doesn't know anything, and or if you are explaining it to someone in your team, never assume anything. Again, we have to understand that more than your knowledge, skills, or whatever, your attitude and confidence and communication have a huge impact on whether interviewer gives a favorable feedback or not. Because at the end of the day, interviewers are also sensitive human beings, or knowingly or unknowingly, your attitude during the interview affects the score that they give you. Sometimes even if you have not done well in the interview technically, but they will vouch for you because they liked you as a person. So the next point I want to cover is procrastination. Oftentimes we want to change the company, or we think we deserve to work in our dream company, but we keep putting off preparing for the interviews or starting the interview process itself. I have seen people for several years who want to try for company X, Y, or Z, but they never start the preparation. Interviews and preparing for interviews are scary and puts you in a very vulnerable, uncomfortable position. Especially being rejected and failing the interviews are not fun. But if you are not happy where you are and want to make a move, then you have to start the process. And most often times we keep procrastinating, even starting to prepare for the interview. But when the time comes where you have to attend the interview, maybe because of a layoff or your manager is making it very hard to work or office politics or whatever, and then when you have to attend these interviews, you will go and attend the interviews with no preparation, and obviously you will be anxious, right? So, and you end up not clearing the interview, and then you have to take some offer, and then you end up going from one shitty job to another shitty job. So what I'm saying is, be proactive, start the process early on, and with time you will build enough confidence to clear the interviews. I hope this video was helpful for you in your interview preparation, and all the best.